Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I wanted to speak about what has been considered a sort of lock on the door of philosophy. And it is the relationship that human beings have with how attention is being certain of the phenomena that is there. Different philosophers have had different approaches. But certain continental philosophers, there has come a similar pattern. And I'm going to explain that in a second. Just a second. I personally, this division between attention certainty of phenomena, it came across to me. I use Mr.Within uses the term the inner realm and the outer realm. That's what I use. But then I realized there have been others who have acknowledged that relationship. For example, Immanuel Kant saw it between the difference between the phenomenon and the noumenon. And what that meant was something that is visible, its appearance is there. For example, when I'm looking at this cup here, there is a certainty. This cup is phenomenological. I can touch it. The certainty is from the experience of the object. But when I want to touch the idea of me, when I want to touch my memories, I see that they are not phenomenological. They are an inner phenomenon, we can say. René Descartes had a similar approach as well to Kant, even though Descartes was before Kant. And René Descartes' approach was a methodical doubt. So this dude was doubting everything, And so he concluded that it's as if three substances, if I remember correctly, there was the notion of God, which was the thinker. That means he sat in a dark room and realized, what can he not doubt? And he realized he cannot doubt the doubter. He cannot doubt that the thought, he cannot doubt, how would I say it? He cannot doubt the doubter. And there came his great distinction, one can say. The res extensa with the res cogitans. Cogitans. Never know how to say that. Again, a distinction between the dualism that René Descartes identified. The difference between an object of mind and an object of matter. This question is an important question, I find, because our attention is where the world is happening. I believe it was Friedrich Nietzsche who said, if a tree falls in an empty forest, when there's no one in the forest, did the tree ever fall? We can see that our synthetical experience of reality, or let me say it like this, if there is no one in the forest and a tree falls, nobody sees the tree. And it's kind of like there can't be certainty unless there is the presence of an attention. So there needs to be awareness before you can be aware of something in a certain way, certain form, certain position. Now that awareness is very profound, because you think philosophers have been talking about nothing. Many people scientifically oriented may think that, but they have been talking about where everything is, and from that question they have been wondering. Immanuel Kant Rene Descartes, both of them, their intentions were to find a certainty to knowledge. Pretty much, we can, for the sake of this episode, I'm going to say, divide the moment between mind and matter, between objects and thoughts. Many people can do that. I personally, in my school of thought, I have a totally different relationship with thought, which is highly based on the unknown. But if you were to see what is a thought and what is matter, matter is thought before thinking about it, before its emergence. That means matter is there. You open your eyes, existence is here. The attention to existence is not dynamic, I feel. I feel at its core, the presence of the being is not identifying as a location to itself or with itself. It's not a location. The phenomenon, let's say the empirical appearance, it is, you can instantly become certain of it. Right now, I am looking at this cup of iced tea in front of me. There is certainty there. A certainty based on the sensation of its being. That means when you engage the phenomena, when attention engages with the phenomena stays. You see, the inner realms, I personally feel some thoughts are like birds on a tree. You go too close to them, they fly away. Certain internal experiences of my own life I've had is that it's like I often say it in these talks, sometimes I miss a train of thought. What does that mean? That means in the inner realm, there is, let's say, an internal object, a subject I'm engaging with. That subject to me has image. I am following the shift of the image. You know what it is? Our inner realms are kind of like liquid. What do I mean by that? When you put your finger, you just put your poke a still pond, the ripple goes to the edges of the pond. Becoming subtler and subtler and subtler. So the inner realms, the mere engagement with them is a transformation of them. This is why I say it's piloting, because it's dynamic. Now the thing is, if there is something in your moment of being, let's say you're a creature, you've opened your eyes, you're looking at this world, and let's say something is moving faster than you, then how would you identify with that which is faster than you? You know, we say that if somebody moved at the speed of light, time would stop in Albert Einstein's space-time. And let us imagine there are already beings, poetically, moving at the speed of light. Do you know how fascinating that is? A creature moving at the speed of light is not defined by light. Can't be like, imagine you were running in the galaxy. Let's say you were the fastest galactic runner, and light was chasing you, and you were running faster than the light beam. Now, if you were running faster than the light beam, that would technically mean you are non-existential movement. You don't exist in sensory light. Of course, this is a thought experiment. I just thought about it. What if the speed of light, something chased you at the speed of light? Like, oh my God, the speed of light's chasing me. Light beams are chasing my eyes. So you see, it's the phenomena of the attention requires an approach, a study that if there's the potential that the sensory filters, the sensory perception cannot justify, we can still comprehend. You know what that means? That means it's like just because someone doesn't have a cell phone in their hand doesn't mean they don't have a cell phone. And the way the mainstream's materialistic inclination is going is that if you don't have a phone in your hand, there is no such thing as a phone. Do you see? And so, I don't know. For me, the scientific mind is very advanced. I don't even understand how there is... You see, in this life, there's 3 views I find generally everything can be perceived. Okay? More than 3, but you can summarize it. Okay? Something is either 100% fully known, something is either 100% unknown, or it is semi-known and semi-unknown with variations in percentage that each could be their own state. So technically 3 states, but the third one, the one in the middle, is vast, has various denominations. What does that mean? That means every human being on this earth, they have looked at their environment, and upon finishing their processing of the environment, finishing looking at the environment, they have nowhere else, nothing else left other than to process the inner realms. And so that thing I was saying, that if the world changes faster than you, how could you see it? Or if you were changing faster than the world, how could you see yourself? And if there was a limited, if we are saying there are greater rooms, if we treat a dimension as a room of a building, of a skyscraper, then if we want to see the whole skyscraper in the room, it's impossible. We have to step beyond the room. So either it's an empty, either the room, how would I say it? Either the sensory perception is like an alphabet, that the alphabet never ends, or the sensory perception is limited, but the way the sensory perception is being used is by higher dimensions. That means 3-dimensional, this space-time continuum is the ink. Like imagine back in the day, you're writing a letter, on a piece of paper, and you're connecting it to a messenger pigeon. This dimension is the ink for higher dimensions. It is just a color in a world of many colors. And I found it that the same thing the person is doing. We in our social sphere, in our society as human beings, we have declared the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We care about freedom, we care about the progression of intelligence, we care about the experience and existence of human beings, but how far and how much have we cared for the experience and existence of the dimensions of reality that could surpass the sensory range of perception? I wondered, what is this? Is there such a thing as reality? If it's like that moment where you're looking at a picture, and imagine you had a dog, and your dog is looking at a picture too. And then you think your dog is seeing the same picture, not realizing dogs, for example, their sensory perception is black and white, as it is suggested. That means even if your dog was conscious to acknowledge how remarkable the Mona Lisa painting was, it would see it drawn in black and white. And that was the thing, that I thought, regardless of how beautiful I see this dimension, could I be limited to how the eyes have opened? So I'm saying that the issue that I find philosophy has is that it comes to the unknown, and when it comes to the unknown, knowledge is not linearly defined. And by the way, guys, in these live streams, when the audience is listening, feel free to anybody can comment on at any point in this talk. You know, the chat section is a wall where you can inscribe anything on it. You know, when Immanuel Kant made this distinction between the noumenon and phenomenon, people see that ideology is like a strict combination of how phenomenology should be. You know, that means, for example, when somebody has a religious ideology, it's as if their worldview has opened to a certain narrative, you know? And that's the fascinating thing, that our ability to surpass idealism in this world, various ideals that are trying to own validity of perception, is by realizing that there is something accessible yet beyond sensory description. And I don't know what in this world made us not ask this question. It was very kind of strange. I'll tell you, I was born in Iran, and I lived there at a very young age. I came to Canada, lived in Canada for some years, went back to Iran, lived there for some years, came back to Canada, and I've been here since. I can tell you, I went and I noticed that there's a concept in Iran. There's it's the Shia denomination of Islam, also very closely interwoven with the politics of the nation. You know, that means Iran is one of those rare countries that there's a sort of, there hasn't been a separation from church and state, as for example in Western democratic countries there has been. I remember that the concept of the soul was looked down upon. It was seen as blasphemous. You know, same way back in the days, you know, what was it, Galileo, Copernicus, you know, they were saying the earth is spinning around the sun, the earth isn't the center of the universe. The church, the Inquisition was like, hell no, man, we're the center. You know, how dare you come to the center of the universe and tell the center that it's not the center. So you see, that's the thing. When you go to the religious folk of this world, they shun the soul. They shun the mystery. They shun the unknown. They say the soul is the secret of God and no man can know it. When you go to science, the scientific sense, the more secular culture, more materialistically rooted culture rather than subjective, discipline-oriented culture, you see that they say there is no such thing. You can't ask the question whether you're in a religious place or you're in a secular place, who is looking through your eyes. You're not allowed to ask that question. And that made me feel like that is it. There is something that every ideology is hiding. The unknown viewer within. That in every idea that has ever existed, even though the person sees the object, even though the person considers the subject, even though the person considers a certainty, the uncertainty has been looking at it. The unknown is you. Before you was an is. There's a quote I want to share with you. I think, if I remember correctly, it's from a man named Zulnan. Zulnan was asked, this mystic, this Sufi mystic was asked, what is the end of the mystic? Somebody came to him and said, hey buddy, you who are saying you're a mystic, what is the end? What is the point? What are you doing? And Zulnan answered. So Zulnan is answering, what is the end of the mystic? He says, when he is as he was, where he was before he was. And guys, I shared this on my Instagram and I put a picture. I'm going to put that picture because the picture kind of really accompanies the quote. Okay, there we go. So if everybody looks at the wallpaper, this is the picture. This picture is the depiction of the archaic man, of the human being that understood that life had various dimensions simultaneously occurring. You see, there have been people who have decided to remain as a person even though as they go towards the fulfillment of their energetic being, it's not a destination for a person. I find strangely we are not born human. We're born in the human form, objectively, but in our minds we're not a human being. When the newborn infant, it doesn't have a personality yet in that way. Now, if you're a Buddhist wanting to challenge this idea, then that's understandable. I gotta keep that for the Q&A at the end. But I'm going to tell you, the child is kind of born without being a person, without being a character, without being an individual yet. So isn't it interesting? We enter this world as a non-individual, and it seems that we should probably, like before the person dies, navigate beyond, become non-individual again, which was this Sufi way of speech where they would. It's still to this day. This quote is a mystery for me. You know, it's a certain mystery to a certain percentage revealed, but experientially, but it's the idea of dying before you die. Even Saint Augustine said this. Saint Augustine said something. Sorry, not Saint Augustine. Saint Francis Assisi, if I remember correctly. He said something in the sense of, it is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. That means Who said eternity is for a person? Whoever said enlightenment was for an idea? Whoever said there was an enlightened person? Because enlightenment is not for a personality. The personality is, again, as Zulnan was saying, when he is as he was where he was before he was. When the mystic is as the mystic was where the mystic was before the mystic was. Do you see? So the end of the mystic is before the mystic was. It's reaching that point where Alan Watts was like, he shared the Zen client where it's like wondering uh, uh, wondering who you are before your parents were born. Like some question like that, a question that is taking you at the edge of the linear function of the system. For me, we should behave as rational creatures. We shouldn't. We should just learn as rational creatures to care and respect the inner realms of people. What does that mean? That's something you find in Canada. That it's strangely, it's not. I mean, every nation has its shadow. Every nation has shade, but I'm telling you, there is something about caring for the inner realm of the other, especially if you're a business person, or let's say you are a UN, United Nations negotiator or something, like some important person in the world. The most crucial thing about any negotiation, any sort of, let's say, interaction of agreement, is that you don't need to have a mutual trust, you need to have mutual respect. What does that mean? That means, for example, if I come and talk to you, doesn't mean I trust you right away, but it means I respect the unknownness of your inner realms because I don't know who you are. You see, that respect, when that respect goes away, then people go into the savage modality where their inner realms justifies the morality of their outer realms, which then it becomes dangerous. That means, I mean, I don't want to get into too much commentary on. Ah! I'm just saying that we have to learn to live with the known variables of our moment of being, and we have to learn to live with the unknown variables. Now, the cool thing is, the known variables, you can just look at them. They're known. This iced tea is not hiding somewhere in the universe. I'm seeing it, this iced tea cup in my hand. Oh, God. It's so hot today. Body temperature definitely has an influence on patience. Sorry guys, I think this was on mute and I was talking. Out of curiosity, how long could this talk have been on mute? Shit. You know, there is one thing that attention is useful for. If you trust your attention, you your karma occurs with the world. If you distrust your attention in the moment, your karma occurs with the limitation of your inner realms. You know, I feel people should get offended, you know? Why? They should get offended from being told that they are a thought. They should get offended by ideas. Because every day you wake up, you get access to new ideas. So to think that you're one idea 24/7, to think that one idea can rule them all, I'll tell you, you can have, we'll create something called everythingism. The ideology of everythingism contains everything. Okay? Oh my god, guys. I gotta apologize. If this was on mute for 15 minutes. Oh man. It's like I was getting at the freshest part of the watermelon if the talk was a watermelon. Damn. Hey, it happens sometimes. I'll tell you guys this. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe the second talk I ever gave, where I was explaining the metaphysics of, just poetically explaining the metaphysics of how the Red Sea, Moses, the sea opened, and why it had opened potentially for the inner psychology of Moses. And I remember when I was like, talking about that, the file at the end of it, it couldn't even be played. It was like the first 20 minutes, and I remember I lost it, and I lost that talk pretty much. I couldn't do anything with it. And it was a situation where I noticed, like, I don't know how to tell you, but it was, nature is nature, regardless. That means I don't understand how nature can fail itself. It's just, it's a luxury to be the human being right now. It's nature's blessing. We are the gift on the surface of this earth. We are the gift. Your intelligence is the greatest gift you're given. What you're aware of, your attention, its presence. There's the Zen story of these two imperial guards. one of the guards one day looks at the other guard and is like, "Hey man, you see that flag? That banner?" And the guard's like, "Yeah, I see it." He's like, "It's the wind that's moving. It's not the flag that's moving. It's the wind moving the flag." Then the other friend looks at it and he's like, "Hey man, but the flag is moving. So how could you say the wind is moving when the flag is moving? Do you know? That means the flag is also moving." So they're kind of wondering about is the wind moving or is the flag moving? They find this Zen master just, I don't know, uniquely, you know. They see the Zen master walking by. Sorry guys, I'm stalling here. They go to the Zen master, the two guards, and they're like, "Hey man, which one's moving?" The Zen master that was like in front of the street of where they were guarding. And the Zen master says, "It's neither, man. It's the mind that's moving." And both of the guards get shocked. And that's the thing, that the mind is, in some sense, alive. It is alive in a way where it can't define, because the moment it defines its being, there's a simultaneity of the whole doership that's going on, how you do things and how you are being something simultaneously. Now that being, the inner realms are the bridge to it. It's as if, why do we have minds? Why did nature design a mind? That's a good question. And I think it is to see itself. Because this world seems to be designed for a creature. You see, it's like how a soccer football pitch is designed for a football player. Similarly, this world seems to be for creaturehood. So because it's so massive, because nature has been going this pattern for a long way, that means it's like a field. We are in the field of creaturehood. And there are greater stations of reality. I feel the species needs to do a few smart chess moves. First of all, 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. They should accept that before whatever is now here in definition, it is nowhere. We must not fear how we are in the middle of nowhere. That's a part of the maturity of the species. Whoever you are on this planet, don't fear emptiness. Don't fear the pitch black abyss. Don't fear anything. This world is meant to be piloted. Now, after we have the species' fear of emptiness conquered, and that fear is very easily conquered if the civilization just acts like it's not a big deal. Sure, there's emptiness here. There's absence. We are manifest for some time, and then we're no longer manifest in that way. But still, energy has its secret ways. So we get 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, realizing first they're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Then we have the decency resonance. The decency resonance means after you have I feel that if the human being taps into a natural pace, it has to do with speed and direction. What does that mean? That means it's like your intelligence as a creature is like a puzzle, and if you direct it and find the right speed, that you're like properly playing the instrument. Suddenly it's as if you've held the violin of your mind properly, and you're hearing the music, right? So I feel the decency resonance means that you are not at war with the inner child. That means any person you see, for example, when they, here's the thing, everybody, they have once been a child, okay? Every human being has once been a child. Now, as the human being endures through life, they are tunneling through various memories as they are made on a day-to-day basis. So you have been this attention tunneling through days where you appear as various senses of self to yourself. Think of all the birthday candles you've worn and who you felt you were. You know, think of all the New Year's and how it felt new. I was like, if an alien, advanced alien, let's say intellectual civilization saw us human beings at New Year's, and they were looking at us, and they saw like every country celebrates their own New Year's, you know, and fireworks go off, all buildings in downtown area is filled. I'm just thinking these aliens are gonna look at us, and they're gonna be like, "This is the most ridiculous thing ever." These guys are. Our time is an abstraction. That's why they're celebrating it at different times. The New Year isn't like all over the world the same day. Do you see what I mean? So aliens are looking at us and they're like, look at these guys going on their own roller coasters of how space and time is real for them and celebrating it collectively. We shouldn't fear that we are simple actors. That's it. That in this life, there is a simplicity to it that will astonish you, and it's I don't know. It's kind of led me into any time my inner realms have been extremely complex, and my outer realms have been very simple. There is this sort of view where I feel as if, even though that's not the case, I'm being poetic, but it feels I've had these tears where I am laughing. At how such an internal complex phenomena had such a simple source. You see, this relationship of simpler phenomena becoming complex Isn't that the case? And most people feel they have to go do complex things in their life, not realizing it's the simple steps that build the complex. You know, I feel that we should behave as 8 billion designers, or let's say sculptors, where every day this statue of this vision that we are breathing for, you know, we change. I was in Milan, Italy. I had a day there. I was there for a day, and I just went into this coffee shop and just ordered a cappuccino. And I sat there with a notebook. And I remember I envisioned that the whole world has been like this structure where every human being has opened its eyes and just changed a bit of this sculpture. And that's the value of philosophy. We're not here playing a game where it's like, yo, you know, I have the bunny in my hat. No, you have the bunny in your hat. Oh no, that guy has the bunny in their hat. You know, it's like when you're done with the magic show, that's when the real science begins. And we cannot ignore that the relationship of an object and subject, and how if the cause is seen to be subjective, it's mysterious. I feel religion, strangely, it says first was the Word. And when you think about it, when you look at this moment, even right now, as you are listening to me in this moment, isn't the subjective self the you hearing this? That means you see, it's as if first was the inner realms, then there was the outer realms. So we've got it upside down. We feel matter evolved into a mind. What Mr. Within is saying, mind evolved into matter, and that's why it can still move matter. But if matter, identifying with an individual, objective-subjective relationship, goes to the source of the mind, we'll realize that the inner realms, at their core, the mind is not an individual relationship. It is a field of activity where the inner knower exists. So when you become aware of that field of activity, then you realize the knower is not based on just the color or the angles you see. Then you have a realistic sense of the unknown. Then your life becomes healthy internally. And externally, people know better than me. I mean, external reality, that's just follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know what else can you say? So, guys, my attention has come to the chat section. Thanks, everybody, for your nice comments and for joining. Dylan says, after my fast, I'm going to look like that guy on the left. Dylan, let me tell you, do you know Buddha has a story where he's trying, this is before he really becomes awakened, because the word Buddha means the awakened one. The guy's real name is Gautama Siddhartha. And Gautama Siddhartha, he tries this path of asceticism. And asceticism is really kind of like, still to this day, you can see it in extreme remote places in India. For example, where the Agni yogis are, the Agni sadhus, they're very savage. Those human beings have an extremeness to them that I feel they are being moved as minds purely before acknowledging society. Because usually the way the human being in at least Western civilization is raised is that you acknowledge society before you acknowledge yourself. That's why you end up being a social creature. That's why you have social sensitivities. That's why, for example, I can totally see it. For example, this is something I personally know, that in compared to like throughout my own life. I mean, I'm not saying this as a general, but for example, Canadian culture and compared to American culture has an emotional sensitivity and alertness to social value that Canadian culture doesn't have. You know, and it's kind of like, but every land has its own advantage. That means Canada has answers to solutions that, you know, if the West is just egotistically not copying, you know. There's this man named C.S. Pierce. He shared an interesting comment which kind of relates to this Buddha story, so I guess I'll finish that. Pretty much Buddha tries this path of asceticism, which is extreme renunciation, and he goes there, and these yogis have this weird idea of this. I feel Buddha later on realized that was the wrong idea even. That they would fast and they would not eat, and they had this mentality that as their body was failing to survive, they felt they saw the spiritual, the divine reality, but it was foolishness. And Buddha tried this. And there's a point where there's part of Buddha's story. There's this in the storyline. How do I say it? There is a moment where he's fasted to a point where he's failed, and his body is too weak. So he suddenly realizes this sitting around and fasting is a failure because his body is dying and it still hasn't solved the problem, you know? And then there's this miraculous story where this girl with a bowl of rice out of nowhere, like from a hidden angle, a hidden angel brought a bowl of rice for Buddha. And Buddha barely has the strength to eat that rice, and suddenly comes to life, is pulled back towards life, you know. And then he goes and returns. You know, you're not here to just be invisibility, and you're not here to just be this visible thing that fears fears itself into extinction, you know. So that's what I'm saying. It's I would say better than even fasting. I mean, fasting could definitely have a physical reason you're fasting, but I'm saying fasting, like intermittent fasting, is that's not bad. But I'm saying to fast to change your inner realms is meaningless. Your inner realms, if there is a potential 0.0001% chance that your inner realms are have nothing to do with the outer realms, it doesn't matter what you do. It's something you just have to notice. That's why they call it self-realization. There was something here about the nature of what you are, and you just need to realize it while you're alive. That was the game the yogis were playing. So that's the story doing. That's the story for you about fasting. But back to C.S. Pierce's idea. He was saying, sometimes if right now, let's say I treat myself, I look, okay, this is the basic kind of mode of acknowledgement, where in front of your eyes, when you see other people, they're objects, but behind your eyes, when you try to see yourself, you're a subject. So let's say we're starting off as being a subject, okay? I'm saying I'm Mr. Within right now, you know, I'm using that online alias. So a subject is looking at an object and is wondering about its origin. Now that subject, in C.S. Pierce's kind of philosophy, he was saying that it could be that the subject could decide an object is the resolution. That means there was an object before there was a subject, or the subject could think it came from another subjective. That means instead of, as Immanuel Kant says, the noumenon, the inner phenomena, the noumenon, and the phenomenon, which is the external phenomenon, you know, he's saying, C.S. Pierce is saying in his philosophy that the noumenon could be from another noumenon. That means the inner object could be from another inner object, irrelevant to the outer object. That means our mind could be, instead of from a lesser dimension, its justification, it could be from a higher dimension. Now, the weird thing is, that's what religion is saying, but that's not what mysticism is saying. Religion is saying that man was in heaven, did the wrong thing, man fell, you know? And sometimes I think, what is this? You know? What is this that, you know, an angel fell from heaven and also man fell from heaven? You see, so the religious idea is we were higher at a higher dimension, we fell to a lesser dimension. So it's a process of dissension. The religious mindset looks at man with a guilt of dissension. But that you see in the secular mindset, they're like, we don't need that story. And so what the secular mindset looks at it only from ascension and evolution. Literally, the creature stood on its 2 feet. That's a sort of ascension, later. The creature was just tired of smelling dirt. It's like, okay, I've had it. And then the evolution began, and the creature stood on its 2 feet. So you see, now the mystics were saying existence is not existence. They were saying the higher dimensions are not even higher. Ultimately, I wrote this in a big intro of my first book. Sorry, not my first book. This book soon to be published. He said, what the story I said was, imagine a ship where 8 billion human beings were on. This ship was so huge that one end of it couldn't see the other end. You know? One end couldn't see the other end. Now imagine from one end of the ship, there's a hole. The ship is sinking. The other end of the ship can't see it. The other end of the ship will never believe that the ship is sinking. But those who see the ship is sinking, they're the ones who respond to it. And I feel after you have completed in fixing the holes in the ship of your inner realm, that means once your individual existence, you're content with it, then the world speaks through you. But it's not the world. I don't want to make this like hyper spiritual. I'm just saying, like, it's just that we have a relationship with nature where we are occurring as nature is occurring, and we have a relationship with nature where we occur before nature does, so then what nature happens in nature, we feel its karma. So this is why all those people who come to the present moment, who has karma in the here and now? How could the here and now have karma? Everything's just here and now. If there's no time, have you noticed? How could you have karma if there's no time? So time is the wheel of karma. And when the center of the wheel yet doesn't move. If you notice even a carriage back in the day, the carriage is still, and the land is still, and the wheel moves in between. And it's like there's an inner realm and there's an outer realm, and time is like a wheel in between. I think that's the best metaphor I've managed to come up with. Yeah, I think that's the... You know, you philosophically 100% reinvent the wheel. But externally, you don't need to if you see the design. So attention's involvement in the certainty of the object has multiple ways it can move. You can feel that attention is not objective, so the certainty of the object is not from the object, it's from an attention that is not an object. You see what I mean? So you could feel you're the unknown knowing things, or you could feel like a known thing and everything else is unknown for you, or you can feel fully unknown, which are like those extreme yogis, and you can feel fully known, where you destroy the unknown. People tell you there's galaxies out there, you're like, bring the galaxies in front of my eyes, and then I'll tell you. You know, and the person's like, why do you just have to move from your viewpoint? So I feel this discrimination of what constitutes our personality and what is being our presence. When you treat yourself as an unknown presence, then every new thing added to your moment is like a gift. So I'm pretty much this guy who has this viewpoint that I'm incredibly grateful for how there was an unknown before the simple, and I just live my life. So whatever happens, because complexity renders to simplicity, simplicity renders into the void. When you're comfortable with the void, you're in a strange state where what can you lose? What can an attributeless witness lose in this life? So that's the huge question. How can attention die? It can stop, but does that mean it's dead? It can shift, but does that mean it no longer exists in the previous? Like, does that mean just because you change the radio channel, that radio host who was talking in a radio station doesn't exist? So you see, we are much more complex creatures in the sense that our understanding of the simplicity is ultimately staring at the void. So the first thing is, whoever you are, if you're a parent, teach your child not to fear the void. It's just like contrast. There's contrast in this world. There is space, and then there's stuff moving in the space. And so based on philosophy was trying to make sense of what the space means, and science was trying to make sense of what the stuff moving in the space means. Because science, at most, I mean, sure, Albert Einstein came and revolutionized the concept of space and time, you know? I feel that attention is free before it's a concept. That's the school of thought I walk in, dear listeners. I feel that I'm not a thought. I'm not. Language comes and goes. It's a technology at best. You know, the way we can use it. It's not you. You know, just because a person rides a skateboard, does that mean they're their skateboard? No, but they are being the life of the skateboard in that way. I'm pretty sure Tony Hawk, you know, might agree with that. So anyways, guys, this is the end of the talk. Thanks for listening. I hope to share some insight. When you become comfortable with your unknown presence, then your personality is comfortable to move in various known ways. So your mind has this comfort to attempt. This comfort to attempt, it has a value, and it's kind of like wondering, in this world, there was this saying, someone would say, it was in this Japanese narrative, where they were living in this messed up world, and the character in that narrative said everybody had to be drunk on something to get going. And it doesn't mean drunk on something physical. It means every human being, because there's the void, you are the generator, you are the energy source of your vision. So you have to not only become energetically responsible for your vision, for your state, and you have to also become responsible for how that energy is being processed to as an individual with free will, which is fascinating. You know? So it's all about the study of what's going on. You know, it's like They asked the guy, "What do you believe in, man?" And the guy's like, "I don't believe in belief, but if I was to give you an answer, it would be, what if what's going on isn't?" You know, it's like pretty much what's reality, whatever's going on. It's like, I don't know what's going on is, whatever's going on. That's my philosophy. Language is definitely a brush. The day humanity truly understands its value is the day we're gonna advance as a citizen. We're gonna become advanced communicators. Back in the day, they would say there were ideas of these certain enlightened civilizations where people would speak in verse. That means the whole civilization was conscious of nature's rhythm. That it's not just an intellectual calculation. This life, you have to abide rhythmically. Your momentary being is like the the the, the surfboard of all the elements that are moving. So for me, life is not just about you getting an answer to a question that's going to satisfy you. It's how you are on the surfboard and how you're riding the waves. And the best advice I could say is that the coolest thing about attempting something new is that you also see a new dimension to yourself. So the person who doesn't fear, the mind opens to the greatest challenges. Then, with the discretion, alertness, and awareness, the person, as living and trusting life and going on, you have to build a symbiosis through various simple moments with a complex vision of your world. I find you got to trust the simpler stages, the simpler foundations of your own existential and experiential constitution somehow. And when you have that trust, then the inner realms are already open. Trust me. It's like you won't find a tool if you don't know how to use it. You find tools that you know how to use. So if your inner realms open up, trust yourself. You know how to use them. You know how to use this mind. You know, it's good to doubt the doubter. Even sometimes. So, anyways, guys, that's the end of the talk. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. And out of curiosity, would any here? I'll type it in case. Okay, let's open it up to Q&A for 5 minutes, and let's see what happens. So, guys, the talk has ended at this point. If you were listening just for the talk, thanks for tuning in. This is the Q&A section. Anybody has a question, um, a comment they want to share or anything, now's the best time. And yeah. Okay, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and engaging in the chat section. I recommend people to go buy a stack of printer paper and find a pen that, I don't know, they intuitively like, just a pen, and put that, take out that stack of printer paper from its case or whatever, and put that stack of printer paper on a table that that's around you, and put the pen on that stack of printer paper, and don't touch that paper and pen. Don't touch that paper and pen until you feel your inner realms. You have observed from your inner realm something worth writing down that you wouldn't want to forget. Do you know? Like an idea too important that it's like, you don't know. I've had moments where I've gone into bed and I'm like, the lights are off, I'm about to sleep, and the most important idea has come to me, and I've just ran and just got out of bed and wrote that idea down on a piece of paper, and then went back to bed as if it's So that's what I'm saying. If you start this conscious relationship where you are trying to study the communication of your mind, and you honor it when your inner realms animate by writing it, I think that's a incredible. That's how you. Writing is divine, and there's evidence of that in history. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings, and namaste.